So if you look at this, there's 2 pages of results for Representation of the People Act. A lot of them are very, very small changes, 1 or 2 provisions, and maybe for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Now, if you look here, the first one, 1867, right? I think you'll find that there's a connection between that and the suffragettes wanting the women's vote, right? And then we've got the Representation of the People Act Scotland, 1868. And then we've got 1918, 1948. So the 1918, 1948 and 1867 ones are the most important ones. And then what happens is in the 1980s, they start making some changes to it. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 changes. There's 1981, there's 1983, 85 and 89. So all through the 80s. And the thing is, the 1980s, 86 is when they repealed fully the Tumultuous Petitioning Act. Before that, that was still in force for petitioning the government, and that's important. And I want to raise the matter of the Election Petition Rules 1960. I've got to check. I want to know if that act is still in force or another one has replaced it, because that is the rules for prosecuting, bringing a prosecution against the running of an election through the High Court. But there are some provisions in these Representation of the People Acts which cover the legitimacy of elections and certain frauds or corrupt practices, right? I think that it both acts, I don't know whether the 1960 petition election rules is still in force, but there would, so I need to find out what the equivalent act is, because that is the act that I'm going to call an election malpractice. I'm gonna call for an investigation into the mayoral election, because I think the blackmail going on with the Conservative Party, I think, well, both parties, the Conservative, well, it's the government, that what they're doing is they're refusing due process unless we vote for one of their candidates in an election. What's happened is we've used a prescribed political process, and what's happening is the government are saying, unless you vote for one of 2 candidates, either, Labour or Tory effectively, or only if you vote in the mayoral election, will we give you a resolution, right? But we're afforded the resolution through the House of Commons. But they're refusing to acknowledge that, and they're saying, well, you've got to, if you vote for our candidate, Sue Hall, we will turn these cameras off. But Sue Hall's been given the petition, which buys a resolution through the House of Commons, which is a higher jurisdiction than the mayoral position. And the Prime Minister is a member of the Conservative Party, of who is saying they're going to turn the cameras off, but he's refusing to do it through House of Commons. So this is not just a blackmail. This is a absolute cork of a classic blackmail. This is a blackmail. A blackmail is, do this. If you do not do this, we're not going to do that. Right? When you've already, we're already due it. We're already due something which they're blackmailing us. It's a blackmail. You will vote for Sue Hall, or we're not going to turn these cameras off. That's what the Conservative Party is saying when they've already been given the swag bag of signatures. I think 200,000 signatures is more than, an MP gets elected, I think, I'm sure George Galloway got 6,000. He might have got 6,000 votes in Rochdale. It might have been more, but it definitely wasn't anywhere near 100,000. I'll have to check. But this is more than there could be more signatures for the House of Commons than what one of these mayors gets themselves to get elected. Now, I've been checking these, and some of them only have, look at this 1989. There are hardly any provisions in this act. It's to do with abolition of declaration of intent, annual reminders to overseas electors, increasing limits of expenses for candidates, so that increasing the expenses, although they're not supposed to be any expenses because we're not supposed to pay anything until everything's get privatised. Well, actually, in 1989 it hadn't been privatised, so the debt that you didn't have to pay for the post, that's for sure. Extensions to those not previously registered in the United Kingdom. So, 1985. So this is just before, this 1985 one is just before that Tumultuous Petitioning Act was repealed fully. So what were they doing in 1985 to this? Extensions of parliamentary franchises. I thought we need less of franchises, these political parties. Qualifications for overseas electors. Not really interested in that. British citizens overseas. Overseas electors declaration. Duration of entitlement to be registered. Renewal declaration. Registration of British citizens overseas. Extension franchise to European parliamentary elections. Franchise. Manner of voting at parliamentary or local government elections. That could be interesting. So, section 5. Absent vote at elections. Absent vote for a particular election. Proxies, that's getting someone to go vote for you. Voting as a proxy. Not to manner of voting. Or offences as to declarations, etc. Well, that is, I'm interested in that, the offences. So I'm interested in section 5 and 12 so far. Deposit by candidates, election expenses, combination of polls, parliamentary and local elections. Well, combination of polls. So we could do a combination of petitions to House of Commons, couldn't we? Between, Tim's, Dave's and John's. That's what we could be interested in for the House of Commons resolution. Ordinary day of local elections, the timing of them, demise of the Crown and parliamentary elections, miscellaneous, ordinary elections of parish community councillors, Welsh forms, increasing penalties for offences under the Principal Act. Well, I'm interested in that 28 as well, because from that election petition rules 1960, they're increasing penalties, so they're actually making the offences more serious. They didn't have any, they only had fines, and the reason that they only had fines was because it was in the High Court, even for like corruption charges, it was only a fine. But my understanding is that is because it's a petition to Parliament, you can't be prosecuted anyway, or not least criminally charged, but what they put is some fines, but then later they've put imprisonment in. I'm not too sure how they can do that if it's a petition to Parliament. This is the thing, have we got immunities or not? Well, you say, well, this is a bit ridiculous, it's an election. If someone was cheating in an election and committing fraud, wouldn't you want them to be criminally liable? But the thing is, the point is that if there's fraud and you find out there's fraud, then it's found out, and then the election has to be, redone. That's the main thing. You want it to be done properly and right. If it was done wrong, is the question of should the people be prosecuted? Well, at one point they couldn't be prosecuted at common law, And therefore, that whole area of law and that whole principle and basis is what we're looking at now with Extinction Rebellion and all these Extinction Rebellion prosecutions and charges, should they be prosecuted. Now, the thing is, this is for election fraud, not for petitions to the House of Commons. There aren't any procedure rules or any detailed acts like this for petitioning the House of Commons. So if they haven't actually made any offences or more serious ones or an increase in penalties, then there aren't any penalties. If there isn't an act for petitioning the House of Commons and petitioning Parliament that's not an election, then you would have thought that it would be under, you can't be prosecuted by common law on the basis of what? On the basis of the right to petition. They actually had to create these offences and penalties in these acts because they didn't have them before. Why? Because of the right to petition. And it's interesting that, but there's one thing about these petitions for an election. You're actually petitioning for the election of a person. I don't think you're pursuing a resolution in Parliament for a criminal or civil matter, or for a resolution for a grievance of something. And that's the difference. It says that, in that Justice of the Peace Act 1997, it says, orders, statutory instruments are subject to annulments and pursuit of a resolution from the House of Commons, right? Well, you don't have a statutory instrument, or you don't have an order with this, because A, you're not appealing anything, you're not seeking. This is like kind of a petition. It is a petition to the House of Commons jurisdiction-wise, but it's actually pursuing the election of a person. So it's a specific type of case to the House of Commons, but under the same jurisdiction. I'll say that. So amendments of other enactments, expenses, repeals, clarification, special polling stations, manner of voting, penalties, miscellaneous amendments, and repeals. Well, let's have a look at this repeals. There's not much here, thankfully. The enactments mentioned in Schedule 5 to this Act are repealed to the extent specified in common fee of that schedule. Section 2, 21.3 of the Representative People Act 1918, time appointed for meeting of Parliament to be less than 2 days, cease to effect. So some of the 1918 one is still in effect. That's very, very important. Some of the 1918 Act is still in use and effect. So that will be important. Section 2, 1918, appointment meeting times, local government reorganisation, consequential provisions, promotes on the Chief Electoral Officer. Right, so I'm interested in look at this, there's hardly anything there. Good, I like it when there's hardly anything there because there's not much to read then, we don't have to. 23, increasing penalties for offences under the Principal Act, etc. Schedule 3 to this Act shall have effect for the purpose of increasing the penalties applying in respect of certain offences under the Principal Act and other amendments to the provisions that contain such penalties. It's interesting that they've got a section to make it important that, you see, the whole thing with, all this Donald Trump and accusations of elections being, they were getting in trouble just for even claiming that it wasn't run legitimately. But they've got quite a lot, significant parts of these laws dedicated to the fact that, considering that it may or may not be run lawfully or unlawfully. But the thing is that when George Galloway was just elected in Rochdale, the principal operator of the election made a declaration that it had been run lawfully. Now, the thing with the mayoral elections in London is if they turn up for that and they're checking all the processes and procedures around it, and, all these, everything's been in that is being run properly, how do you, what happens with this blackmail? Well, that's the thing. What they're doing is that one of the candidates in the election, she has been given herself, this is not even to number 10 Downing Street, actually herself, Tim Rowling gave her 200,000 plus signatures on a petition to her party leader, who is the Prime Minister, to get a resolution in the Parliament of England, right? The petition is made out to Mayor of London and Parliament. And the thing is that Tim Fowler's got a petition in there, but also that John Wazowski, they're all supposed to be combined together, right? And that resolution actually is meant to turn the cameras off. The Mayor of London is meant to do that in connection with the Petitions Committee. But the Mayor of London hasn't, Sadiq Khan. Now, he's also a candidate in this other election. Now, if this particular one thing for these cameras, if that didn't exist, if there weren't any cameras, if there weren't any ULEZ zone, you would have some candidates who are running for election. They've got their own policies and clauses which they're running on, and people will be voting for them on those clauses, right? But at the moment, one of the main clauses that the candidates are running on is over this ULEZ thing. It's one of the main issues, right? So they're actually, that is a subject matter which is being used in order to try and swing the votes. It's part of their advertisements and promotions, and advertisements and promotions come under this. The advertisements and promotions. The advertisements and promotions come under this. All the laws and regulations come under the Representations of the People Act. And that figures into how elections are to be run. So it's not under like, have the ballots been forged or, miscounted or anything like that. What some of the procedures and practices and principles are to do with the promotion. And two of the candidates, one is for this ULEZ camera and one is against the ULEZ cameras. If there was no such thing as ULEZ cameras and it was an election and there were, just standard things, but this particular issue is a big issue and people have done petitions on it and had them in, and there's meant to be a resolution. And the thing is, the party, one of the candidates is a member of the party that put the cameras there and he turned them on and made the order. He made the order for them. They weren't like, it's not like some mayor like 10 years ago who did them and then we're thinking, oh, can we get rid of this now? He himself made the order to have the cameras turned on. And now this Sue Hall is saying, if you vote for me, I will make an order to turn them off, right? But she herself has already been handed a petition which is made out to Parliament, and there are three, and they've got over 400,000 signatures, which affords a resolution from Parliament, and the Prime Minister Conservative Party, of which Sue Hall is a member, saying that they're against the cameras. So why wouldn't he be gleeful to receive the signatures because there's well over 100,000 for a debate in Parliament, which they can get it put through to have order them turned off, which is what the Prime Minister says that the Conservatives want them turned off. But what they're doing is, we've handed the golden tickets in, and they are not going to use those golden tickets to make an order through Parliament to turn them off and override the mayor, which Parliament jurisdiction does. What this Conservative Party, who claim they're opposed to the Mayor of London, are doing, they're not saying, right, Mayor of London, turn these off. What's happening is this Conservative Party, who claim to be opposed to this mayor who's on the Labour Party, they're saying, right, you've collected all these golden tickets now, but we're not going to do this thing because we're banking on this ULEZ thing as we're going to use this political matter in order to get Sue Hall elected. If you want these cameras turned off, you will have to vote for Sue Hall and fill another bag of golden tickets up, or we're not going to turn them off. And that is the blackmail. It is blackmail. They've handed a big swag bag of golden tickets in, and they're saying, unless you fill another swag bag up with golden tickets, we won't turn the cameras off. That is what they're doing. And it is mainly a Conservative and Tory blackmail. And it's not really Reform UK, because Reform UK, Sadiq Khan made the order in the first place, and the Tories claim that they're opposed to it. So Reform UK are not really party to the blackmail, because Sue Hall was given the... Now, if Tim Rowling had printed out his petition into a big cardboard box and walked up to Downing Street and handed it in, and John Wasowski as well, but the thing is, Tim Rowling's already got one live on the House of Commons website, which is seeking a resolution for it, so therefore it's going to be turned off anyway, but they're all combined together. There's like over 400,000 signatures, and that is a lot. And but the Conservative, Rishi Sunak claims that he doesn't want the ULEZ. So why isn't he putting it through Parliament now and then telling Sadiq Khan to turn them off? Because he wants Sue Hall to get elected to be the Mayor of London, or else he's not going to do it, because that is the main point they're running their campaign on, the ULEZ cameras. It's one of the main points. So if the ULEZ cameras are switched off, you don't need to vote for Sue Hall to get them turned off, because they've already got the petition signatures for it, and they're meant to be turned off on. So Sadiq Khan, if the cameras were already off, Sadiq Khan and Sue Hall will be running on other issues and other matters. But that is a pivotal issue, because there's a lot of cameras getting damaged, there's a lot of legal prosecutions going on. There's a lot of they're claiming it's vandalism and all kinds of shenanigans. Yeah, the Prime Minister's saying that he wants to get more police, but yet he's the one who's blackmailing the public by withholding due, and the police aren't. The thing is, there are offences. Blackmail's illegal. That's the point. It's an offence. And there's a special procedure to prosecute for the elections, also to do with promotional activities and so forth, and corrupt practices. And it involves the Crown Prosecutor bringing proceedings to the High Court. Now, the CPS didn't have any problems bringing proceedings against Angela Ditchfield in the High Court, even though she was acquitted in the magistrates. If the Chief of Police is refusing, or the Crown Prosecution are refusing to prosecute because they are members of these political parties, the Tory or Conservative Party, then they're aiding and abetting them. Now, if they're acting on behalf of the country and lawful due process, what it says in the law, then they're not acting impartially or without bias. Because they've got to be impartial and they've got to be without bias. And I think that the Crown Prosecution Service as a entity is very, very pro-Labour Party. It's very, very pro-Keir Starmer because Keir Starmer was the Chief Crown Prosecutor and they're very loyal to him. So I don't think they want to prosecute Sadiq Khan because it will humiliate the party and their party will be finished. So that is extremely corrupt, aiding and abetting. That means that a Crown Prosecution Service could be acting politically in its operations to aid and abet candidates in an election when they're meant to be prosecuting them for offences through the petition election rules or whichever, which I'm just trying to find out now. So this is very, very serious, and the person who's meant to be overseeing the election, these the administrators, I don't trust them. I think they're selected. They are selected, I think, in order to turn a blind eye to things like this. I think there might be an act called the Principal Act, but it doesn't have a date on it. Offences as to declaration. A person who makes a relevant declaration or a declaration purporting to be a relevant declaration when he knows that he is subject to a legal incapacity to vote at a parliamentary election, when he knows that it contains a statement which is false. So we're looking at false statements here to do with elections and so forth. So this is to do with eligibility and all the type of things around there as well. An overseas election direct declaration, a renewal declaration, a person. So this is voters as well. He's not authorised to test this. False. This is all to do with the actual voters. So this is actually to do with the participants, not the organisers, that one. Well, I want to look at the offences for the organisers, not the participants. But there was some rules around the promotion of elections and things like even having signs and banners for promoting, getting people like we're saying Rees-Mogg, on GB News, self-promoting and so forth. There are rules. It's kind of ridiculous, but it may be within a certain area of the polling station, but certain things on vehicles and so forth, unless it's the candidate's vehicle or it's been appointed by the candidate to be the vehicle and things like that. And I'm just this is what I'm going to get onto in a minute and check, because all this kind of get Khan out that's going on with Stop ULEZ and Vote for Sue Hall, you can support and oppose campaigns, but there is some rules around it to do with influencing other electors. Like on some of them, you can't even give them a lift to the polling station and so forth. But every local area's got a polling station within walking distance, but I'm going to check it now. Because it could end up being declared as an invalid election if, because of all this Stop Khan material that's going around, particularly if it's near polling stations on the day and so forth. If the ULEZ people continue to do all the, like vote Sue all in and get Khan out, I'm checking now, but if it is within certain areas, I'll just have to clarify, it may render the election void, and there could be offences. And I know that I'm a big advocate for the right to petition immunity, but that's when you're petitioning like the actual petition that was handed to Sue Hall in the first place, immunity for that, not actually for the election. So the actual people who are engaged in Stop ULEZ are protected and immune because they're trying to get the government to act, but with the election the government are acting, and therefore it has to be run fairly. And some of these influencer materials, I mean, I did some Get Khan Out material, but I kind of combined it and merged it with a petition to stop ULEZ, so it said vote to stop ULEZ on it, not vote to get Khan Out. So that could bring it under an umbrella of protection. Although I didn't actually I didn't put them out anywhere or post them anywhere. I only made them, and I actually made them. It just says the word Khan and then out, but it says vote to stop ULEZ. It didn't say vote Khan out. So mine were kind of like, I would say mine were lawful if you're going to say about influencing voting or not. Manner of voting at parliamentary and local elections. I'm just going to pause it now a second. Yeah, this is just for voting entitlement. Right, so we've done... Now we'll check this 1983 one. So there's quite a lot in this. The 1983... Wow. Whoa. Wow. They created a lot of new law in 1983. Don't even really want to have to go through all this, but parliamentary electors, local government electors, disenfranchisement of offenders in prison, disenfranchisement of offenders. I don't know why David Cameron was going on about prisoners in the vote, because apparently in 1986 there's entitlement to be registered residents general. Is a resident at a particular address. Residents, persons, in custody, not national residents, effective declaration of local connection, registration, registers, removal of anonymous identity, maintenance, registry, maintenance, registers. Right to be registered, alteration, identity, service qualification, effect of service declaration, polling districts. What does it say about polling places? Polling place is to be designated at each polling point. You see, they used to come round to your house. They actually, would you trust these people who came round everywhere and collected all the votes from door to door? Well, if it's meant to be legitimate and it's all government run, to be honest, it saves that whole argument of all the vehicles and all the rules on promotion and so forth, and the postal, free post, and it all seems a lot easier, doesn't it, if they just come round? But they don't even want to do that anymore. Review of the districts, returning officers, combination of local elections, rules for local elections, power to change dates, power to make regulations, discharge of registration duties, offences as to declarations, person who makes a declaration of local connection or a service declaration, if he is not authorised to do so, section B is permitted, he is not authorised to false statements. Oh, breach of official duty, what's that? So, if a person whom this section applies is without reasonable cause guilty of any act or omission in breach of official duty, well, what they're really omitting. What's happened is one of the candidates has been given some votes to get the cameras removed, to give to her political party leader, and he's not done that until the current mayor to turn the cameras off, and he's not put a resolution through Parliament because he wants the people to vote for his candidate in order to secure the party position as mayor. And the current mayor is not abiding by the process either between Parliament and himself. So they're remitting lawful due process from another process which has been invoked on a serious point in which they're hoping to win the election over. That comes under blackmail, actually proper criminal activities and blackmail. Persons whom this section applies are Clerk of the Crown, responsible, any other person whose duty is to be responsible after a parliamentary or local government election for the used ballot papers and other documents. The official judicial officer, administration. He remedies that act or omission in full by taking steps under subsection 1 of that section. You see, another thing is they're not petitioning Parliament. You see, it's not a parliamentary election. There might be an argument that if this was a parliamentary election, and because the matter is a House of Commons matter, that it's a matter of, that it's all, the whole thing's a matter under the House of Commons, but because it's the Mayor of London, it's a jurisdiction underneath Parliament. So with the cameras, they're going to Parliament for a resolution over the Mayor. The thing is, if it was like a policy in Parliament or something to put in Parliament, and they say that, the MP is going to do it, but we've already got elected MPs in the committee who are meant to be already in position. If there was no one in the petitions committee, they didn't have any staff, right? And you submit a petition, we say we haven't got any staff. So if you elect some staff into the petitions committee, then they'll process your resolution and action. But we've already got petitions committee staff, regardless of even if it was an MP election to the House of Commons, if you see what I mean. This is for the Mayor of London, which is it's a jurisdiction underneath Parliament, House of Commons. I don't think that that you can say there's any offences under the actual election until we get into the older ones, and it goes to do with the promotional activities and so forth on the points and policies and candidates. And then you're getting into something that has already, if they're promoting a clause, if they're promoting a policy which has already actually been pursued to an high level and is due waiting to be actioned, like Dave Fowler's, then, and they've already got this, and the Sue herself was under the signatures, then they're running a policy and claiming that they're going to act on a policy which is already having a resolution sought after it. And I think that I might have them on that one, but that's when we go back into the earlier acts. This is why I'm just trying to find out what the newer ones do and which ones of the older acts are still in effect, because I know I really like those older acts. They're really, really, really straightforward and quite simple to use. And when you go down the list like this, there's some really interesting things to read that are self-evident without all this complicated nonsense. This is what's happening to the world. You know, life shouldn't be this complicated. But these aren't even... Failure to comply with conditions relating to supply of certain documents, prohibition on publication of exit polls, requirement of secrecy. So about returning officer. If he fails to comply with any condition imposed in pursuance of regulations under Rule of the parliamentary elections rules. Oh, it's referring to parliamentary election rules now. Was it parliamentary election rules? This is not a parliamentary election for the Mayor of London, though. Is it a local council election? See, failure to apply to conditions. The thing is, with that Justice of the Peace Act, when you are appealing for a resolution from Parliament, these are provisions and conditions. You see, it's talking about conditions now and requirements. They're not abiding by the requirements and provisions of the other acts. I don't think that... Check the 1981. So look at this, 1981, there's nothing there. Disqualification of certain offenders for membership of the House of... disqualification of certain offenders for membership of the House of Commons. Certain offenders. All right. A person found guilty of one or more offences, whether before or after the passing of this Act, and whether in the United Kingdom or elsewhere, and sentenced or ordered to be imprisoned or detained indefinitely or for more than 1 year, shall be disqualified from membership of the... So if they're actually engaging in or found to be engaged in guilty of election fraud, you're disqualified from being a member of the House of Commons. You're not allowed to be an MP, which is why I think, Rees-Mogg with his GB News, if he's found to not be allowed to be on GB News, if he's unlawfully, which he is unlawfully on GB News because he's self-promoting, he will be disqualified from the House of Commons, and that's why he's trying to evade liability. He's actually, at the moment, currently, he should be banned from being an MP, and that's why Mogg doesn't want to. He's got all his chips on the table, all or nothing, because if he if he rides this out until the end of his term, you know, if he goes for a re-election again, then he's been self-promoting. If he continues to be an MP, how is he not self-promoting himself on GB News, right? And if he manages to get to the end of his current term as MP, which they've got a general election coming up, well, he's managed to get through without being disqualified. So at the moment, he shouldn't be an MP. He should have been banned from the House of Commons before that select committee had Ofcom up there when Professor Tim Wilson was publishing about it, and he's been on there the whole time now illegally, unlawfully as Rees-Mogg. So he's riding on thin air. He's just blagging and bluffing the whole thing, you know. Right, so we've done all the 1980s ones. So now, the three now that actually are the main ones that we want to look at is 1948, 1918, and then 1867. The 1867 doesn't say repealed next to it, so some parts of it must be in effect. So the 1948 one, right. It doesn't look like it wants to show us it. Do they have the PDF? I think I must have got the copy from somewhere else. It doesn't want to show us it. They don't want us to see it. They've got one snapshot of one page. Here we go. So this is the 1948 one. And it doesn't look like it's going to show us which parts have been repealed or not in this act, like usual, like with the bits removed that aren't enforced anymore. Those other acts tell you which parts are repealed out of these acts. But if this had have been transcribed and put into this is a PDF, they've got it in raw format. So if it had have been updated like the other ones, then we'd have been able to see which parts they've removed in the latest version, and it would have been a lot easier to work it out. But we'll just gloss through it now. Constituencies, residence adaptation, registration, polling districts, place and manner of voting as an elector, proxies, timetable, effective registered decision, by lot in event of a tie. That is very interesting. Number 14, decision by lot in event of tie. Return of forfeiture of candidates' deposit, returning officers, discharge of functions, returning officer payments, infringements, secretary, and tampering with postal votes, electors, residents, situation of polling station at local government elections, place and manner of voting as elector, proxies, tampering, breach policy. Oh, look at this, part 3, a whole part 3. Corrupt and illegal practices and other provisions as to election campaign. Limit of and return and declarations as to expenses. So the use of motor vehicles for conveying electors to polls. So 33, very interested in that, because it's something to do with you can have something that is an election, which is an election petition to the Parliament of England, and for those purposes you can designate a vehicle. That has to be important because it makes you think, well, if I'm doing other types of other types of petitions to the House of Commons, that not election petition, but another type of petition under that jurisdiction, can I also designate a vehicle for use? If they're doing it for this type of petition, that is a question that we ask. But is there an act that covers that? Well, we don't think so, because they haven't made one. But would the right to petition cover it, therefore, generally without the requirement of any procedure rules like this, or so forth. So number 33, right? Vehicles. And then we've got candidates' right to send election addresses post-free. So they had a legal right to send post for free, okay, if they're a candidate, without being charged. This is before it all got sold off or claiming it back. You just didn't pay it in the first place. So you didn't have to have any money on you. There was no obstruction to sending it if you didn't have any money, because you didn't need any money. Now you need money to do it, and then you claim it back. So it's not free, is it? You're being charged, and a private company's making profit out of it, which I don't think that's in line with the Bill of Rights myself. I think that's a David Cameron hack. In fact, something that the mail. You see, the Royal Mail was the King's Mail. It was actually the Royal Family's mail for sending their letters until they started opening it up to the public and let the public use it. So it's actually part of the country, a function of the country. It's not even a business like DHL or anything like that. It's actually something required, not only for function of state, function of the royal family, function of the entire country. And David Cameron sold it off. So it's kind of really like, if you, if Jeff Bezos owned your lungs, if you sold your lungs to Jeff Bezos, you need them to breathe, right? You can't be alive without them. But if you sold them off to Jeff Bezos and he owned your lungs, they wouldn't be yours. And he would say, right, I'm changing your lungs to, only breathe, so much cubic centimetres of air a minute. And you say, well, I don't want to. We say, well, I own them. I'm changing your breathing rate of all lungs in this country. I own everyone's lungs, so we're changing the rate of breath, in everyone. And you don't own your lungs, so you don't have a say anymore because they're private. This is the thing. The Royal Mail is a function of the country. I don't know how Cameron could have possibly pitched the sell-off of it. I don't know how it was even possible for him. It's almost like, when he's at this prep school and, it's not even his school, and then he walks down the corridor and he does a lot of tables, and then he says, oh, we could sell these tables and make some money out of them. It's almost like Cameron going to prep school and taking all the furniture outside. You got some of these private schools, they've got all this old furniture, this vintage, beautiful furniture, and, like Parliament, these carved bits of wood. It's a private school, but then it's like, oh, can you imagine all the private school boys, taking it all and selling it? And all the teachers come in and you say, well, where's all the tables? Oh, we sold them all. Well, we sold them all to whom? Well, to our own private company, and we're going to charge the school for using them now. Yes, we don't have any private school fees. He could cover his own private school fees, couldn't he? And if David Cameron walked into the private school and if he said, right, we're selling all this furniture, who to? Well, we'll sell it to ourselves. We own it now, and we're going to charge the school, for £500 a day for it. And then, well, this will cover our private school fees. Now we can go to the private school for free, because we'd have to pay to go there because we sold the furniture off. Yes, but it belonged to the private school. Yes, well, we put it through the committee. It's all above board. This is, I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he managed to hack it, but now he's Lord Cameron. He's Lord Cameron now. If there's anything like, I'm quite surprised he didn't sell himself. It would be all right if David Cameron could sell himself. I've bought myself a little Lord Cameron. I own Lord Cameron now. He's my little plaything. Although maybe he is, Charles's plaything. 34. So that's the post clause, right? And then 35, candidates' right to use certain schools and halls for election meetings. Well, this is the thing. I think that Colchester Council Watch or one of the other groups in Bath, they wanted to use one of the council halls for they had their own political party or their own group meeting, and then because it was a Liberal Democrat council in Bath, they didn't like the type of politics, so they said they weren't allowed to use it. I think under the right to petition, I think if it's for a petition to the council, they've got to provide some sort of council services for function. That's what I was going to pull the Lib Dems up on, actually. But this is for the candidate, though, not people doing petitions. But I'm quite sure if you're officially doing a petition, I think that you would have similar or same rights, like to use of rooms or library or whatever. Use of committee rooms in schools. Oh, here we go, 37. This is it. It's called election propaganda. Right, this is what I'm looking for through this entire video, and I've had to record it in 3 or 4 parts now because the memory card's not got much space on it. So this is what I'm looking for. Although these other 33 and 34 are of interest, particularly the vehicles one, but 37 election propaganda. That's what I was looking for. And then we've got appointment of election agent. Well, probably likely someone who's probably pro-Starmer, I won't be surprised. Extensions of corrupt practices. So 39. Other amendments, but securing conformity with rules as to parliamentary elections. Effect on rateability in premises. Prohibition of expenses of election agent, miscellaneous amendments to election expenses, failure to appoint election agent, avoidance of election corrupt agent, avoidance of election general corruption, avoidance of election for general corruption, etc. 46. Personation, other voting offences. 49. All right, here we go. 50. Prosecutions of corrupt and illegal practices. So that must still be the. I think it's looking like that will, if that's not the election. This is 1948. So this was before the election petition rules 1960. So that petition rules 1960, election petition rules 1960 is after this one. So it could well be those rules still, which will update. I think they update from this, or they add to it. Powers of courts with respect to granting relief, restraining false statements, inspection of ballot papers. Period of incapacity. Corrupt legal practices. Area of capacity by election commissioners. Computation. Oh, look, 56. Application of Part 3 to the City of London. That could be relevant in Cairns then. Ordinary day of election timetables, divisions, hours and polls, alternative dates, town district councillors. So we're into these are local government elections now. So those ones for the election propaganda must apply to all of it. Look, this is quite a lot in this. Schedules. 12 schedule references in corrupt practices act. Local elections act. So we've got these corrupt practices acts now. Corrupt Practices Act and Corrupt and Illegal Practices Act. But it doesn't say any date on those acts. So I want to look at number 37.